observations of how we can actually structure the project. So that's just what I'm looking at, rather than sort of specifically Maven as such, just the actual how we're specifically going to structure the project when we sort of migrate over. And there'll probably be a couple of proposals that come out of that, which will then get put through to the development list to get some feedback.
I think you're also made at least a commentary, if not a proposal, on whether or not to use some static Gen API calls versus Sparkle queries. So I think if people have feedback on that, they should definitely chime in too, right?
Yeah, it's so if anybody's got any particular feedback on that, it'd be useful. It was just the observation that I had when sort of working on it, that I could actually, in certain areas, I could actually save a fair amount of overhead by doing simple queries of the Gen API rather than going through the Sparkle layer. And I just noted that given that we are we are using SDB as our default backend, we kind of want to get as much benefit out of it as we can, but whilst not shutting the door on anything else. It's certainly not sort of making changes that would prevent us using other back-end storage engines, but it's just a case of saying, well, if there's something we can do here that's relatively simple that might eke out a bit more performance, is it worth doing that?
It's a very tough question. I was going to chime in right away with my smart alecky response when I first read your post, and then I thought about it a little, and then somebody kind of beat me to it. Like, I'm torn. It's both. I want VIVO to be more performant, definitely, and I think that if we do choose an implementation that uses SDB, we should maximize our use of it. However, in being open, you want to use the most open pattern that you could, and that would be to rely on Sparkle. So I'm torn. I don't know which one to pick. So I think a lot of people may be in that boat.
In terms of performance, I've been doing some work, particularly on the way that we deal with the faux properties. I've got a test branch which makes a minor modification to how we do it, but it should still work. The effect should still be basically the same. It appears to work in the test cases that we're looking at, but that brings us back to 1.7 levels of performance. Slightly slower than 1.7, but it brings us back into the same sort of ballpark.
Well, we didn't mean to put you on the spot, Graham. Thank you for giving us a little feedback. But definitely, I think if anyone's interested in those two topics, the shift to Maven and or the API versus Sparkle layer discussions, there's a lot of back and forth on the DevAll list. And so I would encourage you to go read those threads and then comment if you have a position.
There's also one more announcement. Looks like Paul put that in about the Learning Sparkle Book Club. Paul, do you have a comment on that, or just want people to know about it?
Well, no, I do have a comment on it, because you had mentioned Mike's list email, and Mike mentioned it in the email. And we had the author join us yesterday, Bob Ducharme, and so it went. It certainly was a lot more in depth than what you would expect from just chapter 1 of the book, of going through a book. And Bob said that he would not come every week, but he would definitely show up a couple more times on this Monday time slot. So it was a much more in-depth talk on Sparkle than I had anticipated. So I just wanted to let people know that if you want to learn about Sparkle or have just talk to the author.
That was awesome. How did you pull that off?
I do not. I mean, either he saw it mentioned on the VIVO list or saw a tweet about it 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, I saw he posted on Twitter that some kind of wisecrack that he couldn't get his wife's book club to read it, but he got another book club to read it. So it's really is a great book. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
he's interested in reaching out, to people. So that's very exciting.
What's the time and date of the call?
Mondays at noon Central.
Good spell. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Justin, are you ready to tell us all about VIVO to not LD? He's thinking about how to unmute.
While we're waiting for that, Chris, did Nicholas want to give the talk that he missed last time this week, or should we plan for that next month?
He just gave me a look like he wanted to throw something at me, so I think I'm holding him over for next month. But
Okay, we'll put him down for November then.
Let's get it on the schedule, and we can definitely go through it.
November 3rd.
Yeah.
Great.
He did show us this morning something that maybe if we have time at the end, he was showing us some of his Python linting tools that he used on dchecker for VIVO.
Yeah.
All right, so apparently unmuting myself is a huge barrier to this conversation. I think I finally accomplished it. But that's sort of a fitting start because that's part of what motivated the VIVO to not link data is trying to reduce the barrier to use of VIVO. So let me start off with a story, which is in our project meeting for our VIVO implementation the other day. We've been working on this for, I don't know, close to a year. The project manager and business analysts were talking about removing the link from the interface which allows you to get to the RDF representation for a person. And they both asked, well, what's RDF? Now, they've been working on VIVO for a year and still didn't understand that, RDF is very core to what we do here. And I think that's sort of representative of a sort of barrier we face more broadly. In our case here at GW, we want to make VIVO data available to web developers at the various colleges and schools that are part of GW. And those web developers have no knowledge of RDF, Sparkle, or the VIVO ontology. And having to learn or understand those three things is sort of a knockout punch for reusing VIVO data. So the motivation for VIVO to not link data was to make VIVO data available in a much simpler form and representation that could be more readily consumed by web developers who do not have experience with RDF or other semantic web technologies. The understanding is that in simplifying it, you also lose some of the granularity and detail, but again, for a lot of these use cases, that's perfectly acceptable. So would it make sense for me to take control of the screen?
Absolutely.
Can I do that?
I tried to make you the presenter. Let me click on it again here and see if,
All right.
There we go.
All right, show my screen. So does anyone have any questions about sort of what the intended use case for this is? Or want to take issue with any of that?
I just have a question about, that's Andrei asking. So do you have a real project that uses the VIVO to not LD tool?
So we are testing it now with the intention of using it for here at GW.
And then if the data changes in VIVO, in your other project, you have to accommodate for that. You have to accept, like, pull the data periodically, I guess. Is that the intended plan, like, to use the tool? my voice.
I wonder if we lost Justin. Wonder if he's still on the call there. Justin, we lost you.
Looks like it's back. Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry, I lost my connection there. So
That's okay. Andre was asking a question about how you were going to plan on refreshing the data back and forth. That was all. I'm guessing that was.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, no, I haven't fully figured that out. If we're not going to do it, if it's not going to run against it live, then we need to figure out, like I said, some sort of configurable, like caching or pre-generation. In our case, we update our VIVO instance once a night, so maybe we have to go along some sort of schedule that mirrors that, or maybe a greater latency is acceptable. I haven't worked that out yet.
Well, once a night's pretty awesome. I was just making a smart comment to these two because once a week here, we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, well, in our case, it's particularly useful now because faculty, we're starting to roll it out to faculty. They're realizing that their data is very unclean, and so they need to go back to the source data systems and change it. And at least for now, having those changes reflected quickly is fairly important.
Oh, that's pretty fantastic, yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. So let's start off here. I gotta see if I can. All right. So this is what the interface looks like. The interface is there just for giving it a try. You can run this either from the command line or via this web service. So let's take a look at this. There are two sorts of things that you might want to get back in a simpler format, either a list or an individual. So let's start off with a list. We're going to look for a person summary with positions in. So we'll take a look at the definition of that, but it's basically give me a list of people with positions in a particular department. Okay, and so here I have an example of someone the identifier for a particular department here at GW. We're going against this test VIVO instance. We run it. You can see this is what the output looks like serialized to JSON. We can serialize to XML or YAML. And this is just a results list with a list of individuals. We can paginate it using limits and offsets. And then you can also see we return the full count of all of the results. And so a web developer could use these results to create a results list. You can see here this is the intermediary Python object. We can see what the graph that was returned from the Sparkle query looked like. And this is the Sparkle query that was run. I'll show you how the Sparkle query is constructed because that's really the special sauce here. There's actually we actually have to do 3 separate queries. One to get the results, one to get the ordering on the results, and one to get the count. Unfortunately, it seems like a shortcoming of Sparkle is when you do a construct query, you can't order the results in any way. And here, you want to be able, when you get a results list, you want to be able to order the results list. Giving me the results list ordered by, a person's last name or their first name, ascending or descending. So we can do a similar thing for individuals. Okay, so I have this pre-populated with the identifier for a person in our VIVO system. Okay, and you can see that here it is serialized to JSON. This is turns out it's a dummy record for me. It returns some detailed information about me, including positions I have, my telephone number, publications I've had. You'll notice that this is compressed from or simplified from what it would be expressed in the VIVO ontology. Same thing here. We see the intermediate Python object, what the graph looks like, what the constructed query looks like. You can see that's quite a long query. For people with a lot of information, that takes a long time to render, and so, like I said, that's why we need to figure out either caching or pre-generation. So what sort of ties this all together is the definitions. And the definitions is where you define what goes in a results list and what goes in the summary, or so the information for an individual. So let's take a look at one of these. For the person, this is the definition. This is what drove the Sparkle query, that then drove the graph, that then drove the JSON object that was produced. So we can either extend these to add additional information to them, or we can write completely new ones. So we can write, this is a summary, this is a definition for a person. We could write a definition for an organization. So you can see it starts off defining the where clause. The subject is a person. And then we define the individual fields, like this is where the name field comes from. This is where the email field comes from. And so you can see here, for example, for the email field, this is where some of the power of this approach comes from, is you can hide some of the complexity of the VIVO ontology. So in this case, a person has an email field, and we can hide the fact that the email field is connected via, the email field comes from a vCard, and the vCard has a related vCard, related email vCard, and that's where the email comes from. In this case, a person just has an email field. Same thing with telephone. This can get more complex, so we can, start having some amount of hierarchy. So, for example, we have an address hierarchy. And you can see where, again, we could add more information to this record. We could create additional records like it. Does anyone have questions about that so far?
So you mean if I wanted something besides geographic focus from
sort of,
the object, I could just add it in here, right?
We could just add it in here, yeah.
And then I would map it, and I'd need to put an input field on my form, but other than that.
Well, you wouldn't even need to put an input field in your form. Oh,
it would return all that information for that person as long as it was.
Return all that information for a person, yeah. So if I added, let's see, what don't I have in here? I have positions, I have publications, I don't have courses.
Right.
So I could add a section for courses. It would automatically, be rendered. If I wanted to write a definition for an organization, I would have to start. There would be a new definition for that. Once I added it, listed it in here, added organization, it would automatically show up in the interface and be available.
Oh, cool.
So just to give you an example, we looked at the most detailed one I've written so far, which is for person, but we don't always want a lot of detail. So here's a summary for an organization, right? It just has one field, name, okay? Or you can imagine for a person, here's a more simplified definition for a person where it just includes their name and research area. And so, you can write all sorts of these for whatever flavor of output you want. So that's a definition for an individual. A results list looks kind of similar. So here this is our summary, which we call person summary with positions in. So it's give me a summary for people who have positions in this department, and we can see that that's expressed in this where clause, where the subject, which in this case is the department, is related by a position, and so we walk the relationship, which gives us the list of people, and the list definition is a person summary. Okay, so you see we modify that person summary to add a sort field in there because we want to sort by the last name. Sort by the name of the person. So we have the ability to control, like I said, not the selection of what goes in the list, how that list item is expressed, in this case with the person summary, and then the ordering as well. Okay, all that is documented here in the README. There are some annotated. This describes the process that we go through in creating, how we end up with that final JSON or XML or YAML. This annotates some of the definitions, an example definition, so you can understand what do each of those fields mean and how do they work. You can again see what the resulting query looks like. When you execute that, what the resulting graph looks like, the Python object, and then how that is serialized to JSON, YAML, or XML. And then we have there's the same documentation for lists, describes how lists work, and then an annotated definition to help you understand how to construct one of your own. So that's what I have to cover. If there are questions about that.
Who asked to write this tool? Was it for just recognizing a problem and coming up with a solution, or somebody asked for this?
I think that sees like, what was your motivation? This is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, so it was twofold. It is something that has been it has emerged in discussions in the VIVO community that consuming VIVO data or writing tools for using VIVO data when you don't have expertise in Sparkle RDF and the VIVO ontology is difficult. And then seeing that here at my own institution, where as part of this initial project or initial implementation of VIVO, we committed to making that VIVO data available for our colleges and schools, and recognizing that the web developers in those areas did not have any expertise in RDF, Sparkle, or the VIVO ontology, nor did they want to gain those skills, again, for this very limited use. So it was sort of a twofold motivation, both looking more broadly at the VIVO community and then looking at a very specific need here at GW.
Looks very polished. It's rarely to see so much documentation on GitHub.
Especially how to run your unit tests.
So I've had this beat into me by some much better developers than I am. And then part of it, I have to say honestly, is motivated by frustrations I've had trying to reuse tools that others have written for VIVO.
Yeah.
That has definitely been a barrier where you hear about tools people have written and they're not polished enough that you can reuse them or even get them up and running.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I'm very thankful for, is because you give some good curl examples right in your how to invoke, and then you've got, obviously you've got command line operations and help. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and then, in the end, the motivation is to document it for future me, so that, when I have to come back to this 6 months from now, I can reconstruct, what needs to be done. Or how I wrote it originally, because burned myself way more than once on not writing stuff up while it's fresh in my mind.
So are you looking for any collaborators on this?
Definitely, if there are others that this potentially solves a problem for, I am definitely interested in collaborating. I'm open and going in any direction. Obviously, I have a use case that I need to address here at GW, but I don't, like the Orchid to Vivo work I was doing, I don't see why, if it can help address problems that others have in the Vivo community, I'd, definitely be interested in collaboration.
Well, that's pretty fantastic. I was just wondering I just want to get it through that you're willing to accept pull requests.
Totally willing. Pull requests, tickets, anything along those lines.
Awesome. Hey, Ted, any chance of getting this packaged up with Vagrant?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I'll look at that, or if somebody wants to contribute that, that'd be great.
Why the vagrant for running the?
Well, in the Lawless T Vagrant, have the VIVO to not LTD service installed and running, because I think one of the things that would probably you'd need is an example of an init script for people. Not everybody would know how to get that running off of a reboot, but other than that, it's pretty fantastic. Any more questions for Justin?
Awesome. Well, if anyone comes up with anything, like I said, I am, definitely interested in any sort of feedback, discussion, or whatnot. So, how do I hand the screen back to you?
I will take it from you.
Stop showing the screen. All right.
Awesome. So, Mr. Ted, would you like to talk a little bit about your Python ETL work?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention a tool that I've used a bit over the last couple months, a Python package for ETL called Pedal, Python ETL. So if you want to pass me the control, Chris, I can
Sure.
I just have some notes that I put together.
Handing you presenter.
Okay, I'll make sure this link is in the notes. But I know that there's a fair number of people working with Python to wrangle data for VIVO, and I've been doing that myself for quite a while now. And a lot of times you're taking data from some source and either mentally or actually serializing it to a file as a table. There's lots of tools out there to do that, and one that I've found that I like is called Pedal. And like I said, the use case is that people are pulling data from lots of different places, massaging it, and then mapping it to RDF. And Pedal won't help with that last part exactly, but it will help with some common operations that you might want to do on data that you've pulled in. And yeah, just to be clear, this isn't my project. This is a project I found online. It came out of Oxford University in the UK, a bioinformatics group there. So it's for doing ETL with Python. I've linked to the documentation from Read the Docs. One thing that I like about this project is the documentation is quite good. Also the source code, and there's about 200 or so stars on GitHub. The last commit was I think in June, so it's it's not one of those projects that started up and then fizzled out. And then there's also a Google group where people ask more in-depth questions. And their tagline, the project's tagline is, it's designed primarily for convenience and ease of use, especially when working interactively with data that are unfamiliar, heterogeneous, and or mixed quality. And I think most of us probably have familiarity, especially with the last one, mixed quality. So why would you do this instead of, this library you could do with regular Python. You could write your own libraries to do it. Why would you use PEDAL instead of sort of rolling your own? One reason is that there's built-in readers for for a lot of different types. So CSV, Excel, JSON, XML, databases, so on. So you can read data from a source like that.
Ted, did we lose you?
So once
there we go.
Once you have the data in PEDAL's table structure, you can do things like filter. So let's say you had a column with appointment type, and you only wanted faculty. You can run a filter and just pull those out. You can sort. You can join CSV files that have shared keys, which is pretty cool. You can do validation. So if you're getting a feed nightly, which I have seen, and for some reason a column is missing one night, you can use the built-in PEDAL validation tools to just throw an error before it starts processing that. Another reason, like I mentioned already, that it's used by a fair number of people, about 200 stars on GitHub, which is generally a good sign for being actively developed. The documentation's good. I linked here in this gist to a folder of examples of the different operations you can do with PEDAL. It reduces the need for boilerplate. So reading from a CSV is just PEDAL, read from CSV. And then you can also use it in something like IPython to sort of interactively explore data. And then the final thing I wanted to say about it is just a quick example of reading from an Excel file. You can see that there are only 6 lines or 5 lines of code there, because PEDAL is sort of included a wrapper for reading from Excel files. So you just say PEDAL from Excel, the name of the file path, and then the sheet you want to open inside of Excel, and then you can start working with it. And that's really all I had to say about it. So if you're working with Python and you're getting data and cleaning it and mapping it into VIVO, I think PEDAL is worth a look. I think Chris has looked into a couple others, so if people have experience with anything else like this, if it's in Python or another language, I think it would be good to talk about those either on one of these calls or post to the list, because like I said, a lot of times we're trying to massage or clean up data from different sources, and there's a lot of good tools out there that we might be overlooking.
Yeah, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah, and this is one where I found sometimes a tool like this, there's a big learning curve because it has sort of its own way of doing things, but I found this one to be a good sort of happy medium between being easy to learn and also having a lot of features.
Oh, that's a good recommendation right there. Yeah, we're looking at using PEDAL here. We're in the process of rewriting a lot of our data ingest from sources like PeopleSoft. And we had a lot of custom Python before that just did a bunch of business rules and validation and things. And one of our goals this year is to rewrite all of our ingest to use something standard. And it looks like PEDAL's going to be one of the top contenders, if not the one that we choose.
One thing I've looked into a little bit, it's designed well in that it won't read, it uses Python generators and iterators, so it doesn't read large files into memory, so you can work with some pretty large data sets as well. So I would be interested to hear if you do pursue it and how that goes for you as well.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ted. Any questions for Ted?
This looks good. Has somebody used pandas? It's also some Python library.
So that I haven't used it myself, but so pandas is a data analysis tool written in Python, and it's has a big user base in scientific communities. And Petal actually can read pandas data structures. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. I'm looking into that for some big data set that we have now for another project that we are doing, not related to VIVO. So that's why I was wondering, has somebody used it? But it looks promising even for VIVO.
So if we don't have any more questions or comments, I just would like to put in a plug for people talking during our next call, which is November 3rd. Yep. Nicholas is already on the agenda, but we have room for, I would say, at least two mini presentations, and we'll also meet December 1st. So you could sign up for either of those dates. And I also just want to say we're only looking for a few minutes, kind of like what I did just there with Petal. So I think there's lots of good candidates for quick presentations like this.
Absolutely. Our main goal with these calls is to keep each other informed and to try and share what we're working on so that we can benefit from it as we're all trying to make decisions on how to manipulate data in and out of VIVO. Prime example, so we all don't keep inventing the same kind of Python serializers. I think there's a whole bunch of us out there that have built our own over the last couple of years. But it's great to see how many VIVO projects there are at GitHub. I'm excited to see that. It's been a long time coming.
So do we have anything else, Chris, or should we call it a day?
That's about all I got, unless anybody else has any questions or announcements or comments. Again, thanks to Graham for coming to his first Apps and Tools Working Group call.
Oh, Graham was here. Hey, Graham.
Hi.
And we even had Alexander Rademacher here for a little bit all the way from Brazil. So, we're working.
Yeah, I had enough of him. I just had an hour talk with him before this meeting.
We're like gnashing with this call. No, but seriously, I don't even.
3 continents
right?
on one call. Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate it. If you want to sign up, definitely sign up. I'll paste the link one more time in the chat window. And if not, then definitely please attend. And we'll see you guys November 3rd.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Is this